the community for hosting me today. I hope you can see my screen. Jeff, please can you just confirm that you can see my screen? All right. Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So this is just a quick outline on what we're talking about today. And by way of introduction, the topic is from culture to bottom line, basically how leadership fuels effective performance. So saying leadership affects everything, culture, profits, performance, everything is all hinged on leadership. Leadership is the glue, that holds the organization together. Without leadership, a lot of things will fall through the cracks. So that's basically what the topic is about. I hope that it can be as interactive a session as possible. So in terms of outline, we'll look at just key understanding, or foundational um, definitions and some empirical insights, data, what the data is saying, and then the linkage between leadership, culture, and performance. And then we'll look at how, people are a useful, most needed tool when it comes to strategy execution. And then we'll wrap it up with some takeaways. I have a little bit of an emergency, so I am going to be running through the slides, but I'm happy to take questions at the end of it. Okay, sorry, what's going on? All right, so just to be sure that this is still looking normal, right? Okay, so key definitions for us as far as this topic is concerned, 3 keywords. There's leadership, there's culture, and there's performance. And these are words that are, we're not strangers to. These are words that we use all the time at the office, in nation building conversations, everywhere around us. These words are thrown all around, right? But just so that we're on the path of discovery. So let's definitions. So leadership basically is any role that affords you the opportunity to direct, control, influence actions, emotions, thoughts, decisions, and behaviors of people, as well as system processes and resources towards a particular objective or set of objectives. So it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to do with a job title. It doesn't have to do with a position. Like when Joy asked me a question earlier, I said I prefer building, and she was like, wouldn't you rather lead a team? And that's why I said you can lead from anywhere, really. You don't have to be CEO or head of department. A leader is somebody who has that opportunity to direct, control, and influence. Then we'll talk about culture. Culture is a generally accepted way of doing things by an organized group of people within a particular space, wherever that space is, whether it's physical space, geographical space, mental space, spiritual space, any kind of space. And I mean, for those of us who can remember, back then in primary school, when we say culture is, how do we even define it? Culture is the way of life of a people, something like that. It still rings true for when you're talking about organizational culture. So it's basically the way we do things in an organized space. And that's why culture differs from location to location, from physical space to physical space, from geographical boundaries to geographical boundaries. And then lastly, we have performance. And what is performance? Basically, is that continuous output, the results, capabilities that an individual gives in relation to set standards of reasoning, behavior, and actions by which your success is measured. So that's why you say, is a performer, meaning the results you're bringing to the table, or your entire entity, your skill set, which is your technical abilities, your behavioral abilities. Is it giving the results that you were hired to give, or the results that the organization expected that you would give when it was making the hiring decision to choose you? So those are the key elements of what we're talking about this afternoon. And now to just by way of engagement, think about where you are or where you're being in terms of your experience. Can you think of anywhere where the leadership behavior and the whole were one and the same? So if you say, oh, culture, we are a group of transparent people, did leadership actually display transparent behavior? Does anybody want to unmute and just say yes on a scale of 1 to like how we do with
Yes,
that
from here.
alignment, as you just quickly do a mental assessment.
I'll put it on 3.5 to 4, thereabouts.
Okay, so that essentially leadership is reflecting the culture. That's what it is, whether good or bad. It doesn't matter whether the culture is good or it stinks, but leadership is actually displaying or that to displaying what the culture is. A lot of times we see that alignment. Sometimes the results shock leaders. You know, this is our culture. We say this is our culture, and then leadership is behaving in one way, and then the results are in a different way. So, for instance, I'm working on a project with a company where we're trying to do a culture transformation, and the business is doing well, profits are rising, the clientele list is growing longer, but attrition is also rising, engagement is reducing, job satisfaction is reducing, and leadership is surprised, like, why? What's going on? And when we examine the culture, we said, you know what, the culture is actually delivering on what it was designed to deliver. And what is that? High performance, no matter how it's done, bring the business in, bring the money in, regardless of how it's affecting the employees, right? So that's that when it comes to alignment, that's that it's not about whether the culture is good or it's bad. It's basically, this is what we said our culture is, and this is the results we expect. Are we behaving in line with that expected result? So to also help us understand this a bit further, it's important to understand different types of leadership styles that we have. Autocratic leadership style. And this is what we'll look at the how do I say it now? Like characteristics, that's a tongue twister for me. Characteristics of an autocratic leadership style. So if you're in an organization or in a team where leadership is autocratic, you'll see things like control and predictability. You know what to expect. There are no surprises because there's little room for change. Everything is controlled from the top to the bottom, and day in, day out, you know what you're going to expect. There's no surprise there. Independent decision making, meaning independent of the wider workforce. Employees do not participate they barely participate in it. So 2 or 3 people at the top level huddle
Hi,
together, they make
Grace.
the decision.
Sorry,
Yes,
your slide has not moved.
it hasn't.
Yes.
Oh dear. Has it moved now?
Yes.
Okay. I think I'll just let me see. Let me go back to where I was. All right. So I was saying that these are some hallmarks of an autocratic leadership style. So you have the hierarchical operational framework. So it's very bureaucratic. There is, you know how you have in startups, flat organizations, no, you can have like 5, 6 steps before you get to the top. So you see, it allows them control every decision that is being made, every outcome, every input. And then the advantage of this kind of leadership style is that there's stability and clear expectations. Things are not changing. Nothing will just come and rock the boat one day. Everybody knows what to expect. And to a large extent, things are stable. Profit is stable. Sales is stable. Even the workforce movement, manpower planning is stable because there's command and control. But the downside to that is fear and compliance. You know, you're afraid to break the rules. You don't know what to expect. You just stick to the rules. It's an organization, such organizations, you hear things like, well, that's how I met it, or you met us doing it like that. So just follow. Even if it doesn't make sense to follow, even if there are better ways to doing it, just follow what you're being told because nobody wants to be the one to rock the boat for fear of reprisal. And what do you have? There's little creativity, little innovation. Such organizations do not change. They do not really, they don't evolve. They become they become old. The rest of the world passes them by, right? And then let's look at democratic leadership. It's quite different from autocratic. So where you have control and predictability for democratic, we have teamwork and openness. It's open. It's just like how we say democracy is a government of the people, by the people, for the people, meaning it's we choose who we want to lead us, the way we want to lead us, and how we want to be led, right? So decision is participative. We want to take a decision on whether we should get, how do we make transportation easier for staff? Should we do staff buses? Should we do transport allowance? That's when you see memo will go out and everybody in the team, let's talk about it. And then you pass it back through your team leads to management and then vote. Okay, let's open a poll. There's a lot of poll voting in those organizations, right? And operational framework is unified. So everybody is involved in doing what needs to be done to get the result that needs to be gotten. Feedback is heavily relied on. Transparent communication is heavily relied on because you want to get people's buy-in before you embark on any project or initiative. And problem solving is collaborative, right? So it's not about, oh, well, you are the one who made the mistake, so there's a bug, fix it. It's on you, fix it. You have till Friday, fix it. Don't bother the rest of the team or don't bother this other team that is working on another product. It's more of collaborative. Okay, let's come together. I don't have what I need. Do you have what you need? Okay, spare me 2 hours from this team, spare me 1 hour from that team. And that way, everybody feels like they are a part of something real. They feel loyal, they feel committed, and that drives engagement and innovation. People are not afraid to make mistakes because, you know, when things go wrong, everybody will huddle together to solve the issue or to resolve whatever has gone wrong. Yes, I'm trying to move my slides. I don't know. I hope everybody can still see the slides. Okay, so next is transactional and then laissez-faire. Transactional, as the word implies, it's tit for tat, it's give and take. I pay you to do a job, nothing more, nothing less, no questions asked, just give me the results. And it's quite effective when you want to, especially in roles like sales, which I do understand that RevStar community is mostly about. You know, a lot of sales functions, you have, what do you call it now? Commissions. You earn a commission based on how much you're able to sell, commission based on the amount of, the portion of target that you're able to achieve. So it's this for that. If you're not bringing in the result, then you know that you're not getting this. So it's very heavily dependent on performance, and there's a structure. So because of that, there's also stifled creativity. Let's just work the way we've been working to get the results we've been getting, because any slight change we risk not getting the results that we've been getting. And for us, the result is more important than the process, right? And the next one is laissez-faire. Laissez-faire is, this is the mother of all freedom. There's autonomy. Do what you want, how you want. I'm not micromanaging you. You want, just do anyhow, yaga yaga. That's how it operates, right? There's so much freedom, so much flexibility. But even that, too much of that is not a good thing, you know. People are less accountable when things go wrong. There's no unified way of working. There's no organizational cohesion. There's little responsibility. And there's even when you say self-direction may be against team direction. So ego may come against team may come against the organization as a whole. So it's not necessarily the best. And then lastly, we now have transformational leadership. Transformational leadership, we've been talking about transformational leadership over the last 3, 4, 5 years now. And basically, organization that is led by continuous improvement and adaptability. You know that good is the enemy of better, better is the enemy of great, right? So you keep on working it, you never get to best. There's nothing like best. You just keep on working it and you keep on adapting. Why? Because your product or your service should be driven by the needs, the market needs. What are your customers saying? What is your target market saying? But if you're not being driven by that, then you'll just be building a product that people may not necessarily need anymore. And for those of us who watch documentaries on Netflix, I just recently watched what's the name of this one now? I is it I've forgotten the name, but it's the one about BlackBerry and how BlackBerry essentially went on that just before the iPhone came about. And there's so many lessons to learn from that in terms of leadership, in terms of product development, in terms of moving with change, in terms of ethics. Again, it all falls on leadership. Next is BAG and behavioral modeling. BAG stands for bold, big, hairy, audacious goals. Goals that blow your mind. Like you're wondering, like, can we ever achieve this? It doesn't matter, right? You keep striving to achieve it. And in striving to achieve it, your leaders are modeling the right kinds of behavior. They're building trust, they're building loyalty, they're building commitment to the workplace. So that's another one. And then, like I said, adaptability and agility, they work hand in hand. They work hand in hand. Now everybody's saying, oh, agile project management. You have to be agile. If you're not going to be agile, then before things move before you're able to respond to product change needs, it may take forever, and then your competition is already ahead of the pack. And what does this basically do? It allows for high motivation and engagement. Look at it, Google. Everybody wants to work in a place like Google, even if it's not Google exactly, but you want to work in a place like Google because Google is such an environment that allows for innovation. They allow for creation. You know, Google I think it's the first company that started that 20% time to work on a project that is important to you. Work on your own project. And a lot of apps that we work with now from Google are apps that were developed this 20% time from developers just doing something different that the team wasn't doing, but it's now, a whole part of the Google suite. And essentially, overall, what that gives you is a vibrant and forward-looking culture. Not that the word is not a healthy culture, because really, what is a healthy culture? A healthy culture for company A may not be a healthy culture for company B. But the essence is, the most important thing is forward-looking. And by forward-looking, it means, can this culture sustain this business? We're in 2020 now. We're in 2025. Back in 2020, COVID caught all of us probably by storm. This is the first time in 100 years that such an event would happen. So pretty much our generation and the generation before us hadn't seen something like that. Everybody around the 100-year, less than 100-year, hadn't seen something like that. But organizations that were vibrant, agile, were able to quickly move. Organizations that could not bend struggled. Oh, how do we still meet our customers' needs? Okay, we still need one more person to be going into the office every time, And I know there's a whole conversation now about, back to work, remote, hybrid, and all of that. That's a completely different kettle of fish. But in terms of basically just being able to move with the times such that your business does not die, it's able to evolve from one generation to another generation. It's hinged on continuous improvement and agility. And that's why when you look around Nigeria, for example, you can hardly find a company that has been in existence, an indigenous Nigerian company that has been in existence for the last 100 years. Indigenous, don't say First Bank, because First Bank was not originally indigenous, right? Coca-Cola is not up to 100 years. Which other one again? Union Bank, not up to 100 years. So those are some of, when you now look at those 5 leadership styles, I think it's even almost, it's no gainsaying that you can tell the leadership style that would literally drive the best results. So it's clear that how you manage people, how you manage your resources, how you direct things, how you control things has a huge impact on how every other person around you behaves. And so for leaders, I want to believe everybody on this call is a leader. Again, this has nothing to do with your job title or the role you currently occupy in your organization. As long as you are a thinking, feeling, rational human being that is working, you are a leader. So note that how you direct, how you control and influence people and things can include money, things can include time. It shapes how things are done within your span of control. And it therefore determines your output, as well as that of your team and the organization as a whole. So now let's look at what the data is saying, just in case some of us are still doubting that there is no linkage or a relationship with it. 46% of companies say that leadership is the most difficult quality to find in employees. And if you look further down, 20% of sub-Saharan African workforce is engaged, and we have the region with the highest percentage of employees seeking or looking out for new jobs. Poor leadership can cost organizations as much as 7% loss in total annual revenue. When you just look at all of this, I think about Africa as a third world continent, and then I think about the first world continent like Europe and North America, and in North America specifically the US and Canada. And then, okay, I've mentioned Europe. When you look at the problems that we have as Africans, as a continent, can you or can you not tie it to leadership? Because one wonders, why is it that a Nigerian who could barely get anything right here moves to Canada, US, UK more than half the time, and then they're shining, they're succeeding, they're excelling, they're thriving? Is it just the change of environment? Is it the weather? Is it the heat versus cold, or skin color, or what accent? It's not. It's leadership. It's how people have decided to design their society in such a way that the output will be beneficial to even the least of the society. If you look at further details, you see that global employee engagement levels dropped from 23% to 21%. And the fundamental reason this happened was because manager engagement also dropped from 30 to 27%, of which only 44% of the world's managers say they have received management training. Now, this is where the major issue is. A lot of us find ourselves in leadership or management position. So you join as an analyst, right? You're an individual team contributor and you're doing so well. And before you know it, you're being promoted. You've been promoted to what? Team lead or supervisor. You now have 1 or 2 people leading under you. And that's it. So as an organization, we expect that, well, you're so good at your job, you'll be able to lead other human beings to do what you were doing before while you are monitoring what they're doing. Everybody forgets that there is a level. Some people have innate management and leadership skills, and even when they do have it, it still needs to be honed. It still needs to be developed for such an individual to bloom as fully as they can, right? But most times we don't train our managers. We just promote people. They're happy. Oh, I'm now assistant manager. Oh, I'm now manager. Oh, I'm head of this. Oh, I'm GM. But fundamental training that helps them to manage the people, the human beings in their span of control is missing. And this is affecting the world. And we've been told that if this continues, managers are burning out, middle managers are, in fact, there is research that is showing now there's a dearth in middle management. Middle managers are leaving the organizations, whether voluntary or involuntary, they're leaving organizations because of a variety of reasons, which include engagement and well-being. And if these two things continue to decline amongst managers, business performance and GDP growth worldwide is at risk. So when we talk about leadership and how and its linked with culture and performance, it's not just a fancy thing. It's a real issue. And if you're not sure of the kind of leadership, negative leadership practices such as abusive supervision, micromanagement, lack of recognition leads to reduced morale, engagement, and productivity. Employees who are disengaged are less likely to innovate or contribute to organizational goals. If people are not contributing to organizational goals, if people are not coming up with ideas that will make you build better products, then productivity will be less, profitability will be less. Toxic leadership fosters a culture of fear, mistrust, and low morale, which also negatively impacts productivity. So all of these things are, they affect businesses. And you can say, yeah, there are people looking for jobs, but even when we say, oh, there are many candidates, it's hard to find the right candidates for a job. So even when you leave a job, research has shown that when people leave jobs, it costs an organization about 1.5 times annual gross salary of that exiting employee's salary to replace them. Not to now talk of the time that it will take for such an individual to match up to productivity, which ranges from anywhere between 3 months and 6 months. So you see, it's a loss. Anyhow you want to look at it, it's a loss. If leadership is faulty, everything else becomes faulty. The result may not, you may not see it immediately. It's just like a standing fan that you plug in, right? Once it's plugged in, the blades are just revolving. What I mean, you can even think of a ceiling fan. It's just revolving and revolving and revolving. But once you turn it off, it's not the same moment that you turn it off that the blades stop. The blades don't stop revolving abruptly and immediately. They keep revolving, and then slowly they wind down until they halt. That is the same thing with, the results from poor leadership on culture and performance. So you can see that leadership clearly is the linkage. Sorry, because of I'm not sure what screen I'm even using. I can't even use the animations and transitions, but just ignore all of that. So you can see that leadership is the linkage between culture and performance. And why? Because it is hinged around these 5 things that I've written here: emotional intelligence, communication, feedback, reward systems, and response to failure. The way a leader handles these 5 things will determine the culture that permeates that organization, and then the results that the people in that organization will deliver. So let's look at emotional intelligence. Basically, this is asking leaders to be self-aware of their emotions. Do you know how you feel in certain situations? Do you know what your triggers are? Do you know what your triggers are? Do you know how you would react? Do you know the consequences of your reaction? Do you know when you're going over the top? Do you know what to do to de-escalate? Do you know what to do to temper things down? If you can recognize it in yourself, can you recognize it in your team members as well? Right? So for you to be a leader that drives positive culture, and to be self-aware, you need to be able to acknowledge your own emotions, right? When you're able to relate with them to the point where you can understand how you're feeling. Understanding how they're feeling doesn't mean that you entertain or excuse bad behavior or rubbish work delivery. It just shows that you have an understanding, and you can and relate in a way that can turn the situation around for the good of the employee, yourself, managing your own emotions and managing the emotions of the other people working with you. The next is communication. Communication is not a one. Sorry, somebody saying something? Okay, communication is not a one-way street. It's a two-way street, and it starts with you first clearly expressing the goals that need to be achieved in the language that they can understand. It also requires listening intently, listening to actually understand, not listening to get defensive or to punctual points. And then respect. The fact that somebody is your subordinate doesn't mean you should talk down on them. The fact that somebody is your subordinate doesn't mean, or the fact that you know better than a person doesn't mean you should talk to the person in a way that makes them feel less than a human being. Everybody deserves to be treated with some level of dignity, from the cleaner to the CEO. And so when you're able to allow clarity, listening, and respect guide how you communicate, you're able to get the best out of people. Next is feedback loop. And essentially, feedback loop is basically how leaders are shaping behavior of the organization as a whole. So how are the leaders behaving? Are your leaders, or we call ourselves leaders, but we come in by 10 a.m. and we say, yeah, it's flexi working. But then if other people come in at 11, you say, well, that's not flexi working. What's the difference between 10 and 11? Whereas on everybody's employment letter, we have something there that says we work from 8 to 5 and everything. So, and then The next is reflective environment. The reflective environment basically says it speaks to the work environment show being indicative of those values that we've already outlined for ourselves. So if you say, oh, one of our core values is trust and transparency, anybody that comes into the organization should feel trust and transparency. We're behaving in a trustworthy manner. Somebody can come and talk to you about Bemisola, and then you're listening. You don't give Bemisola the opportunity to also speak to you, but you're already handing down judgment, quote unquote, on Bemisola. It contradicts trust and transparency. And then at the end of the day, it's alignment that is required. Everybody has to be aligned to whatever our core values have been defined to be, and we must constantly check to be sure that our behaviors are reflective of those. Next is reward systems. Again, this happens in sales-driven organizations. How do you reward people? Is it the same reward components that everybody has access to? Is it clear? Is the reward structure clearly communicated? Is it fair? So for instance, fairness can have to do with so maybe a new product that nobody has ever heard of, and in this part of the world, saying in West Africa, it's not as useful for us in West Africa as it will be to somebody in the Middle East. So you have your sales team in the Middle East, and you give them a target of, okay, sell 100 units. For every 100 units, you get $1,000. And then in Africa, sell the same 100 units for every 100 units, you get $1,000 or less. The question is fair in this part of for you to sell the same amount as the person who is selling it in the place that they would use it. You know what I mean? So it has to be fair. It has to be reward. You know that's organized or in for the team and the individual to be recognized and rewarded. Last had response to failure. They say how you fail either make you or you have the same team and the company. If you see failure or mistake as an opportunity to learn, it changes your perspective, and it starts with you. As a leader, you have to be vulnerable to be able to even admit your own mistakes when you prove to. You're not perfect. I don't think anybody's expected to be perfect, or anybody's expected to get 100% all the time. So if you have that at the back of your mind, that no matter how good you are, you can also make the slightest mistakes. It shifts your perspective, and you can turn it around to make sure that everybody sees mistakes as a learning curve, and there's openness to talk about mistakes instead of name, blame, game, shame. I think we used to say that in similar HR, name, blame, game, shame, or something like that. It's open. Everybody accepts. And when you create such an environment, in fact, before you even ask questions, people come up to say, oh, I ghost. This is what I did. This is what I'm doing to fix it. But if you have any other ideas, please share with me. And you're able to create balance. When you do this, you have an environment where people take reasonable risks. And when they make mistakes, they don't sweep it under the rug. Because sweeping things under the rug has cost organizations tons and tons and tons. For example, there's a company called Enron that's in the early 2000s. It eventually went on that because they were hiding their financial losses under any account software. And they didn't know 7 people actually died, but they came out in the open. They did not hide it. They came out in the open and expressed it. And because of that, Johnson & Johnson is still a trusted brand today. So lastly, how do you now execute strategies through people? it all lies, it boils down to ethical leadership and transparent communication and embedding culture in strategy. Like you say, strategy culture is strategy for breakfast, but not just breakfast, but breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So if you put only profit before behavior, then such a company is bound to fall eventually. So you have to put ethics first, do the right thing. If you make a loss today, you can always make a profit tomorrow. Do what is right, and don't just do what is right. Be seen to do what is right. Model the right kind of behavior that you want to build trust and loyalty amongst your employees. And then for strategy is not just what we discuss in the boardroom. It's something that has to seep into every area of our work. So sales, how do they sell? How do they build their sales funnel? How do they communicate? How do you address customer issues? Your culture has to seep into every strategy and give room for freedom and responsibility. That way people can easily adjust and change results when results need to be changed. Sorry, I'm rushing. Like I said, I have an emergency. And lastly, this is just to recap. As a leader, you have to continuously evaluate yourself, evaluate your team, evaluate your strategy. Be honest, look in the mirror every now and again. What are the gaps? When you identify those gaps, plug those gaps. Those gaps can be filled by training, can be filled by reading a book, they can be filled by coaching, mentoring, can be filled by healing your team. I know of a consultant that recently worked on a project, a culture transformation project with a company, a large company, and the MD was shocked to hear that something that he had done to one of the employees 4 years prior was still hurting the lady. And in fact, she was even crying at that retreat, and everybody was, and he had to apologize. Your title is not CEO, but it's on you, because everybody that comes in contact with you will remember how you treated them, not how the name of the organization treated them. And the culture is on everyone, from the CEO to HR to managers to heads of departments and individual team contributors. But the performance is the result of how I'm doing leadership on my part and how we are doing culture on our parts. And every day is a new opportunity to do better. Like I said, you go back to evaluate, okay, what didn't I get well yesterday? I will do it better today. And then write down your commitment to number 4. Every day is a new opportunity to do better. You made a mistake. Don't let it drag you down. Don't sink into it. Don't be in your feelings for the rest of your life. Come out of it and actually do better. And that is where I will stop this presentation. Stop questions, anyone? Stop sharing my screen now.
Right, so this is the time for us to ask questions. Do we have any questions? All right. So Grace, while you were speaking, right, actually towards your last slide, you talked about just healing. Like, in your opinion, what are silent killers of a healthy workplace culture? Let me ask that question again. So what are silent killers of a healthy workplace culture that leaders often overlook in your experience?
Shortcuts to profit. When you're getting the results, but you're getting it the way. It's easy for everybody to be distracted by that. Sorry, until things start breaking down, you see people start resigning, and then you're wondering what's going on, not knowing it's the team lead or the manager that is actually rubbing people the wrong way just to make sure the team is hitting their targets. Yes, it's good to hit your targets, but how are you hitting the targets? That's one. And then when people no longer trust the organization, they're not speaking because they don't know what they're going to get. They're afraid of reprisal. They're afraid of consequences of speaking up. Afraid of so you just think, oh, okay, nobody wants to talk. is a silent killer. So mindful of for those two things. In meetings, when people are not talking, they're saying, okay, yes, everybody is always agreeing to the idea. That's a silent killer. So those are two things. Two very, very easy to spot things.
Okay, so if you're leading a team right now, what can one do right now? What's like the first thing to do now to sort of shift from a negative culture? So we've heard all these things and we know how bad they are, and how it affects performance. But what's like the early start? Like, what can I do now if I fall victim to these things? How can I change that for me and my team?
Okay. Like I said, sorry, your question, is it from the
From the
employees part
lead,
or
no,
from the
from the
team lead
leadership.
part? Sorry,
Yeah,
from the
yeah,
leadership
yeah.
part. Okay. So, like I said, the first thing is to evaluate what is you have to be honest. You have to be very, very honest. You have to be willing to be vulnerable. People see vulnerability as a weakness in leadership, but it's actually a strength if you can use it well. People want to see that the person I'm relating with to is a human being. Something that happens to us when we see celebrities, we say we are starstruck. Is because we they're like gods. They're like literal stars. Like, oh no, this one. If a celebrity is passing by you and you've just gotten their autograph, and then the next thing the celebrity farts, is like, huh? Ah,
Even you,
even you, and then it reduces,
yes,
it might reduce exactly. It's not, that doesn't operate in the workplace. People want to know that, hey, my boss, this mistake that I made, I actually made it 10 years ago. I was in your position and this is what I did, you know? So the first thing is being vulnerable and open. You have to be able to create an environment where people can, if your team lead, if your team members are not talking to you, if they're not opening up, there's a problem. And the first thing you need to be able to do is to get them to open up to you, to be able to trust you, because once trust is dead, my dear, people are just marking their time. Because like I said, one of the lines in that empirical study says that 70% of employees in sub-Saharan Africa are just looking out for the next job. So out of 10 people on this course, people are looking for the next job. That's a fact.
yeah, true.
So it's those soft things that make people stay, because Gen Zs and millennials, which make up 45% of the global workforce today, are looking for more than just a salary. They want a place where they trust the leadership. They want a place where there's loyalty, where there's commitment, where there are things other than salary, where there's mental health. And you might say, oh, Gen Z or everything, mental health. Yes, some people are exploiting it, but that is very important. That is very important as well. Yeah. So that's that for me.
So So there's a question there's a poll actually on the chat, and I don't know if everybody has seen it. So just very quickly, just so we able to understand what type of leadership that our companies right now operate. So let's just quickly answer that question. So is yours? I think there's one missing. And Grace, am I right? Is there like a transactional? There's
Yes, there is.
transactional, right?
There's transactional. Yes.
Okay. So
Definitely,
transactional would be F now. So whichever way it is, I don't know if so people will say they are all transactional. But what current leadership style describes your company? I'm looking out for responses. And we can put it on the chat box if we cannot unmute ourselves and just speak. I will call Oribukola because I know him. Oribukola, what's your company's current leadership style? Paul Dacom, I don't know if Bukayo is still on the call. I also know Richard. As I'm calling them, somebody just left. Don't worry. Would you want to call you? What's your current leadership style? If you want to write that, I think what did Tayo write? What's that? Okay, so a combination of autocratic and what do you think about that blend, Grace? Autocratic and democratic blend.
So I was just going to say that there's no leader that uses just one all the time. It's not
Yeah,
possible.
it's a mix.
It has to be a mix.
Okay.
But what you want to ensure is you're mixing the right type of stuff for the right and applying it in the right situation. So, for instance, there's a crisis in the organization. You don't have time for participative, or you don't have time for democratic. It is autocratic. Everybody fall in line. Let's fix this.
Mhm.
And then when we finish fixing, we can come back and be saying, "Oh, sorry, how did you feel? I broke your heart. Okay, no vex. Sorry." So sometimes, and most CEOs tend to be autocratic. They tend to be autocratic because there's fire under their backside too. Investors are putting pressure on them to say, "Hey, where's the money? Where's the profit? We're not seeing the numbers." Their board
Yeah.
is putting pressure. They also have an integrity that they have to show to the world that they're capable of running this organization and yielding profits in millions, right? So all of that is on them. So sometimes we need to cut them some slack, but a transformational leader is the one that knows, okay, I can be a bit of this when I need to, but I am also this. At the core of my being, I'm a human being, and I'm happy to treat every other person like a human being with the integrity that they deserve, or the dignity, I beg your pardon, that they deserve. Where our autocratic CEOs miss it is where everything is just autocracy. They don't care.
Yeah.
You're
Leaning
dying,
towards
and
that.
just give me the money. And this is happening, I don't care. Just why you get out of my office, you're fired. That's where we get it wrong, right? And yes, you can say because that generation too never really cared much about mental health. They never cared
Mhm.
about how they're feeling. So they've grown used to suppressing how they're feeling and not also taking care of themselves. So sometimes it's good for us to ask our managers to, how are you feeling? How are you? How can I make your life easier just a little bit today? And then in silent part so that you don't kill me. Before you kill me, let me help you. So yeah.
Okay. So this will be my last question actually. And if there's any other question, please anybody can stop me. But in today's world where there's a lot of remote work and all, how difficult is it to sort of have like a company's culture and make sure that like if everybody feels it, like it's not just I wake up in the morning, I do my work and I go. How can company culture be seen in the remote work space?
Yeah, that's why culture has to be embedded in strategy. If culture is not embedded in strategy, then would limit culture to, okay, it's until I see you before I can relate with you culturally,
Mhm.
right? So it is only the most culturally adept companies that still thrive in remote settings. So culture is not our office. Culture is not the nice things we put on the wall. Culture is not
Mhm.
TGIF. Culture is not
It's not pizza.
it's
It's
not
not sharing
pizza
pizza on
Friday.
Friday.
It's not that nice corner in the office that has the green space, the snooker board, the sleeping room, the dark room. That's not culture. Those are output of the kind of culture you're driving. The culture there will be, okay, this place is open. We believe that people have the right to rest. Nobody's a robot. That is our culture. So in that way, if I'm working remotely, I know that, all right, it's 5 o'clock. You want to close, you want to sleep. But can we just work on this first for 1 more hour, and then feel free to show up tomorrow morning whenever you want to. You don't have to come in you don't have to join the team meeting online, because this is the more important thing I need you to work on now. That is where culture will shine, even when we're working remotely. But if it is dependent on, oh, let's come together for TGIF, it's dead on arrival when you move to a remote or hybrid setting. So to fight that, culture, whatever it means to you, whatever the organization has defined it to be, must be something that is reflected in the strategy of the company, from sales to HR to marketing to customer service to product. This everything. It must the culture must be reflected in the strategy of all those um, individual departments. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So does anyone else have a question? Sorry, what am I what am I sharing? Yeah, so does anyone else have a question? Okay. I think that we are all good. So if we're all good, can we just
Thank you so much.
celebrate
Thank you
Grace?
so much.
Can we celebrate Grace?
Thank
I'm sure
you.
that
I'm
I'm not
grateful.
just me and Grace are not just chatting. Let's
Thank
be
you
sure
so
that it's
much.
just
I'm
not
really
me and Grace
grateful. Thank you.
having a conversation. Oh, nice. Thanks, Richard. Great.
Thank you. Thank
Amazing.
you so
Thank you,
much.
Grace, for
Thank you.
coming. I know that you have an emergency, and yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for spending time with us.
Thank you so
And
much.
I'm very sure that when
Yeah.
we need you, we
Thank
can
you. I'm
always get
grateful.
you in. All right.
Absolutely.
So once again,
Absolutely. Thank you
nice.
so much.
Once again, this has been an amazing session. First, I've learned a bunch of things, and I'm sure that we have all